How does shame shape identity? I use this mental model when I think about our identities and what our identities consist of. And the mental model that has been the most helpful to me was to imagine that we all have something that I call true self. That's our true essence, that's who we are at our core. And then we also have a million different archetypes. And these archetypes could be could be anything. They're just different parts of our personality they're always available to us. And they can be anything. Like an archetype could be, for example, the mother. Another one could be the flirt. Another archetype could be the boss babe. Another archetype that you have could be like the submissive woman, the schoolgirl, the business woman. It could be anything. And we all have millions of these archetypes within us. And the way that I see identity is that we all have this true self, which is who we are at our core, who we are at our essence. And our true self is the one that is driving the bus. And all of these archetypes are on the bus, but they're not running the show. True self is running the show, and the archetypes are somewhere in the back of the bus. And the archetypes that are part of your current identity or part of how you see yourself currently, the parts of you that you've made peace with, those archetypes are like towards the front of the bus. And the archetypes that you don't like, the parts of you that you have disowned, are like shoved towards the back of the bus. And shame forces us, or like creates more of these archetypes that gets shoved towards the back of the bus. Because if you're ashamed of something, then that's not part of your current I am. That's not part of your current identity. It's probably something that you are trying to hide. It's something that you have a hard time admitting to. It's something about you that you hope other people never find out. It's parts of you that you haven't made peace with. And so because you haven't made peace with these archetypes within you, they don't get to have their time in the front of the bus. And they always get shoved in the back, and their voice always gets silenced. And you never get to hear from these archetypes because they bring out parts of you that you're not ready to embrace yet. But the thing that we don't realize is that even though they are in the back of the bus, and even though we are trying to suppress them because we're ashamed of them, they are still on the bus. And they are still part of our identity and part of our I am, even though these are parts that we see as like bad, quote unquote. But like they're not bad. They're just parts of us that we just don't feel comfortable showing to the world. That's really what bad means. There's no such thing as a bad archetype. There's no such thing as a bad part of you. They all belong. They all make this beautiful piece of the puzzle that becomes becomes your identity, and every piece is important. Every archetype is important and it has pros and cons. Even the archetypes that we consider to be good, or the archetypes that we are proud of, have pluses and minuses. Like even the parts of us that we love have pluses or minuses. For example, let's say that one of your archetypes that you love is that you have a really nice body, right? Like, and you love that part of yourself, and you have really embraced this archetype of the person with a really aesthetically pleasing body. But then that's a good thing. You see it as a good thing because you've embraced it. But this archetype that we consider to be a great thing can also has many potential drawbacks, such as like people can see you as superficial, people can see you as conceited, people can see you as like you're full of yourself, and so on and so forth. And so all of these archetypes, even the ones that we consider to be good, have good things about them and bad things about them. And that's also true for the archetypes that we're ashamed of. They also have pluses and minuses. And all of these archetypes together, and all of their pluses and minuses, plus our true self, are all on this bus, and they all create our identity. And so I think it's worth working through these things that we are ashamed of. And I think it's worth investigating exactly why that is, and what archetype this shame represents, and why we're ashamed of it, why we see it as bad, quote unquote, right? And when did this become bad? Like, when did this become shameful? Why do we think that this is shameful? And start asking some questions. And ideally, you would be in a state of like just observing, like a very non-judgmental state, let's say, when you're observing, when you're working through these questions, and just try to look at it objectively. Try to think of it as like a friend is talking to you about something that they're struggling with, right? Like if your best friend came to you with something that they're struggling with, you wouldn't be like, come on, that's terrible, that's bad, don't ever say that again, right? You would listen to them, and you would probably, at the end of the conversation, you would try to convince them that the thing that they're ashamed of is not so bad, right? Like we've all done this with our friends. And so why can't we do this with ourselves? Right? I mean, we just try to see this archetype as like it's not yours, it's your friend's archetype, and try to see it from like a more objective place, and try to see it as it really is, as a characteristic or a part of you that is not necessarily good or bad, like it just is. And as everything else that just is, as every other archetype, it has good parts and bad parts, and we just decided for whatever reason to be ashamed of this particular archetype, even though there's probably like nothing to be ashamed of. And so I think it's worth investigating, because even though we are ashamed of these archetypes, they're still part of our I am, and they're still a part of our personality, and they are on the bus along with the archetypes that we have embraced, and also along with our true self. And so if this video was interesting to you, and these kinds of questions are interesting to you, then I think you would definitely love my book that I recently published. It's called Mastering the Middle. And this book is about how to get from the time that you have a desire to the time that you receive your desire or receive your goal, how to get from point A to point B without getting lost in this maze. And I call this gap between desire and reality, as I refer to it in this book as the middle. And in this book I talk you through the pitfalls that can delay you in your progress between your desire and you receiving that desire, and the things that can keep you delayed on your journey, and how to move forward towards your goal without getting lost and without getting delayed. And so if that sounds interesting to you, I will leave the link to my book in the description box below. And thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next video. Bye.